not hearing me. Hi, I'm Steve Pleich, and I'll be your host for tonight's program on Voices from the Village. The subject for this evening is the Pachamama Alliance, an alliance that was born of an invitation from the Achuar people of Ecuador, the visionary warriors of the Amazon, to work in partnership to help preserve their land and culture. We'll be discussing that work at length with our guests, but first, a little background on these fascinating indigenous people and their modern-day partners. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, spanning the borders of Ecuador and Peru, the Achuar people have lived and thrived for centuries. Traditionally warriors with a fierce devotion to their land, they kept their sophisticated culture remarkably intact as late as the 20th century, mid-20th century. In Achuar culture, dreams are the guiding principle of life, and it was within these dreams that tribal shamans first glimpsed the imminent threat to their people. They dreamed of oil companies poisoning the rainforests and causing irreparable damage to their land and their traditional way of life. Emboldened by this dream prophecy, the Achuar made the courageous decision to reach out to the modern world for help in preserving their culture. In 1995, a group of people, including John Perkins and Bill and Lynn Twist, traveled to the rainforest at the invitation of the Achuar elders. The Achuar shared with this group their vision of an endangered future and made a request for allies from the north who could help them change the dream of the modern world. This initial group committed themselves to a partnership with the Achuar, and upon their return to the United States, Bill and Lynn Twist co-founded the Pachamama Alliance to carry out that commitment. In 2005, the Alliance launched a suite of transformative learning workshops which have drawn thousands of people around the world to learn the value of ancient wisdom in addressing modern crises. The Achuar remain steadfastly committed to maintaining their stewardship of the rainforest, taking a stand to preserve this valuable resource on behalf of all life. They refuse to let humanity destroy itself. We are fortunate to have with us tonight 4 members of the Alliance who will share their mission and their vision of this truly remarkable collaboration. It's my great pleasure to introduce our guests to you now. First, Alain Desouches. Alain, welcome.
Thank you.
Jody Snyder. Welcome, Jody.
Thank you.
Cecily Cahill. Cecily, welcome to the show.
Yes.
And finally, Polly Hughes. Polly, welcome.
Thank you, Steve. Glad to be here.
Traditionally, we have gone out on the street to ask some questions of the people in Santa Cruz about what they think about the subject matter of our show, and one of the subject matters certainly is the preservation of the rainforest. So let's take a look at that Voices from the Street now and see what the people of Santa Cruz had to say about their knowledge of how the rainforests are being depleted in South America.
All I can say is that, it's the rainforest. It's amazing, and I hope it never disappears. I hope I get a chance to see it before, it's gone, or that it doesn't ever disappear, because it really is getting cut down still a lot. And I think a lot more people should know about that, because I don't even know enough, so. Education.
Me either.
Yeah, I've heard that, all the trouble and the logging going on and people being displaced and even conflict around it with the indigenous people. Yeah, and on that, but overall, we need the rainforest, any kind of forest, anywhere, for the oxygen. We breathe oxygen, expel carbon dioxide. They have expel oxygen, so we have a balance there. Well, we used to have a balance that's shifting very, very fast, day by day. It's in peril. We are in peril.
Have an important part in the ecology of the waterfront, particularly up in the coast. They provide strong habitat for wildlife of all kinds, and the forestry business does rely on rainforest for its services, but there are other options, and the better we pursue those sustainable options, I think the better off we are overall.
Well, like the logging industry for years and years cuts down the rainforest for paper and all kinds of goods that we could easily just be recycling or finding a better way of making those materials. And we should stop cutting it down, because it's one of the major contributors for oxygen and things that we need for our environment. I don't know, it seems pretty obvious to me.
The clear cutting that's going on is sort of, even though most of the clear cutting that's going on is in developing nations, which sort of require this economic boost in order to raise their standard of living, I feel like cutting down the rainforest isn't the correct way to do it. even though it might be most practical for them, I feel that the U.S. and developed nations should support these developing nations in adopting greener methods of boosting their own economy.
I am all for anybody doing anything that they can on behalf in a positive way of everybody else, and it's a tall order these days, and that's all I could say about it, because that's really all I know about anything.
Okay. Well, not surprisingly, the people in Santa Cruz have a remarkably broad worldview, and that's why it's so exciting to really have the guests we have this evening and talk about the preservation of the rainforest, the Alliance, the great work that you're doing. Let's begin, Alain, with you, just some of your background and your engagement with the Alliance.
Well, okay. I've been working in the computer industry all my life, and that was taking me far from that kind of a concern. Mm-hmm. But after I retired from that in 2005, I started to look at what's next for me, and I was doing volunteer work, and I was assisting at a particular retreat, a health retreat, where I heard they were going to show something about the rainforest and something about the Pachamama Alliance. I said, what? Pachak what?
Yes, exactly. My first reaction. Yeah.
So anyhow, I was kind of curious. Mm-hmm. And when they started to show the program, something happened, like with me. It just really totally blew me away. First off, it offered a mission, a purpose, mm-hmm. that was to bring forth an environmentally sustainable and socially just and spiritually fulfilling human presence on the planet. I said, whoa. I can get behind that.
There you go. It's
for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
There's enough work to be done there.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that really touched me is that it was at the request of indigenous people.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we mentioned that.
From a civilization that was absolutely not connected to our modern world. Yeah. But they saw that what we're doing, mm-hmm. and we're making a request. So in other words, it was, instead of being a good idea from somebody next door, it was like coming deep from the rainforest, from indigenous people. And so I got very touched by that, and I trusted it right away. As a result.
That's a wonderful story.
Yeah.
And Jody Snyder, your first inspiration or engagement with the Alliance?
Like many people, went to their, they have a yearly luncheon in San Francisco where they introduce what they're doing at Pachamama and keep you abreast of what's happening. Okay. So I went there and very, very intrigued by an indigenous elder who spoke to us and said something to the effect of, if you're coming to help us, do not waste your time. However,
really? That's an interesting statement.
Yeah, if you're coming because your liberation is bound with ours, mm-hmm. your future is entwined with ours, welcome. Let us work together.
Wonderful.
And I thought, wow, this is kind of like your epiphany. Like, mm-hmm. okay, I'm mm-hmm. on. So it was at that time that a friend of ours was doing trips for the Pachamama Alliance, and we went on a journey 2 years in a row down to meet the Ashwar. Mm-hmm. And this was a phenomenal opportunity to experience what I call the First Peoples. Had no mm-hmm. indication of what the modern world really was about. Just so connected to the natural world. It was just an amazing experience to witness this.
And now you put me in the position of having to apologize. It's Ashwar?
Ashwar.
I kept saying Ashwar. Ashwar. Now I know. Okay, thank you so much.
You're good.
Cecily, I'm sorry.
No, I just want to say that we watched the Pachamama Alliance come forward and help the Ashwar with cartographers came mm-hmm. forward and lawyers and computer systems and teaching the indigenous people about their civic rights and doing so much work to bring them up to face the modern world. It mm-hmm. was phenomenal. We just went all aboard as far as being a steward of this group forever. Yes. Down to the last couple of years, they've been working, the indigenous partners with mm-hmm. Pachamama, in changing the constitution of Ecuador. and working with the president to actually
fascinating.
include indigenous rights and obviously the rights of nature, which is unheard of. So that's the kind of
And that's
alliance we're
interesting
talking.
that you mention stewardship, because I mentioned in the introduction that they are stewards themselves of the rainforest, so it's fascinating. And Cecily, your first vision of this?
Well, I first connected with Lynn Twist through her book, The Soul of Money, and through that learned about the Pachamama Alliance. And there was one of the very first symposiums that was a request of the Ashwa, because all the while the Pachamama Alliance was working in Ecuador, helping them preserve their rainforest, there was still this little irking reality, was that, you know, the most important work you can do is to change the dream of the North, which was the request of the symposium that were developed. And indeed, the first symposium was one that I attended. And my word, this in fact was before the film Inconvenient Truth.
Oh, really?
So it was some years ago. And the mindset of people then was, I don't know, a bit of recycling, maybe solar. And I thought, what can I do? So I checked the box to become a facilitator.
Well, there you go. And that's how it
I got
starts.
involved.
That's wonderful.
You know,
That's wonderful. And Polly, share with us some of your first engagement with the Alliance.
Well, Cecily and I are partners, so when she became involved with the facilitator training and started presenting the symposium, she pulled me along.
Okay.
And I ended up being her production person, helping with audiovisual and that kind of thing. And that's still one of my main roles with the symposium. But then I got on board actually presenting the symposium, and I got trained as well. And the symposium is quite an amazing presentation, and it's gone through a lot of quite an evolution over the years. It's in 4 sections. It starts out with where are we, which kind of gets everybody on a level set about what's actually happening in the world. And then it goes into how did we get here? So it looks at historical things, and it also looks at the fact that as a culture we are kind of trained into this, and it's not really anybody's fault that's what happens.
Right, of course.
Has happened.
Yeah.
It's just we're mistaken.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the symposium, because particularly the Awakening the Dreamer symposium, we have a trailer that we'd like to show now, and that'll give us some idea kind of what the structure of this is a bit. So if we could see the trailer, the Awakening the Dreamer symposium.
This is not the kind of world any of us dreamed we would be leaving for our children. We want to give them a world in which human beings live in harmony with one another and with the entire community of life. Yet the collective dream of the modern world, our dream of progress through endless growth and rampant consumption, has become a nightmare that is threatening life on Earth. Is it possible to change that dream? We used to think it was too difficult or too late, but not anymore. Right now, around the world, people are gathering together and discovering how they can participate in creating a new future. They are taking part in a powerful experience called Awakening the Dreamer, Changing the Dream. The purpose of the Awakening the Dreamer Symposium is to bring forth an environmentally sustainable, spiritually fulfilling, socially just human presence on this planet. The symposium, a live, interactive group experience led by trained volunteers, is spreading rapidly across the globe. Powerful documentary modules reveal where we are and how we got here, and then illuminate what is possible for the future.
When you say you're going to throw something away, where's away? There's no such thing.
We have a society that believes that we have throwaway resources, throwaway species, and throwaway people.
A new cultural story is emerging at this time in history, and it's a story that says we are not separate, but rather we are profoundly connected at both the macro and micro level.
Every single one of us can do something to make a difference.
If we work together, we will come up with exactly what we need to do to create a sustainable future for all life. Together, we are a genius.
Through guided group interactions, quiet self-reflection, and shared feelings and ideas, participants gain powerful insights that generate hope, inspiration, and a commitment to individual and collective action.
Normally it would take people months, if not years, to study this kind of material, and the way it was delivered, connecting the heart and the mind, it's amazing that you can do that in a single afternoon.
It looks at the root causes and gives us an opportunity to move forward.
A chance to really make the commitment to lead a more sustainable life.
The symposium really empowered me and gave me hope.
The future is in our hand.
I will recommend the symposium to everybody so we can, as a group, start changing the world for our future generations.
Go to awakeningthedreamer.org and find a symposium near you. Join the growing movement of global citizens who are awakening to the urgency of our situation, who are becoming aware of the possibility of creating a new future, and who are taking action to change the world by changing the dream.
The purpose of the Awakening the Dreamer
Cambiando el Sueño Symposium is to bring forth
an environmentally sustainable,
Spiritueel bevredigende,
socially just, présence humaine,
human presence
on this planet.
en este planeta.
带来公正和平。
You know, this is just so wonderfully inspiring. It's what makes doing this kind of a program really not only fun, but informative, and I'm really enjoying just being here and beginning to talk about this. One thing that I need to know is, what does Pachamama mean?
Oh,
the word.
The word Pachamama, it's a word in the Quechua language, which is the main indigenous language of the Andes and Latin America. And some people translate that as Mother Earth.
Oh, okay.
But actually it means a lot more than that. It refers to the sacred presence of the earth, the universe, all time. It's a huge concept.
Yes.
So when we talk about Pachamama, we're talking about everything.
Well, I like talking about everything. That's wonderful. Now we're going to see a 1-minute symposium. Cecily, just give us just a brief introduction to this, just brief video.
Okay. If every advertising agency considered environmental sustainability, spiritual fulfillment, and social justice, and put all their monies that they spend in other sorts of advertising into working on those issues, they could come up with this.
Okay, let's see this. The 1-minute video. Wombat.
Yo, listen up. This is your home. It's the only one you got. This place is pretty, but you can't live there. You can't even get there. So I repeat, this is your home. It's the only one you got. Cherish it, protect it. It's the only one you're gonna get. These guys, they're your neighbors. They ain't going away. They ain't leaving. You have to get along with them. So you have to learn to share. You have to get along. You have to learn to get along because they are your neighbors. They're not going away. Okay, all this stuff, the animals, the waters, the sky, the ground, the bugs, the fish, the tacos, the people, they're all connected. Everything is connected. They all depend on one another. If you ignore that, you're doomed. Repeat, doomed, okay? So listen up. It's all one. Not two worlds, not three, one. Just one. So get it and give. Remember, all is one, okay? Hit it.
And one of the things that really makes this, again, I say inspiring for me, is it seems to kind of meld old world wisdom with kind of a new world search for social and economic justice. And as many of you know, and many of our viewers know, I was involved for some time, and I'm still involved with Occupy Santa Cruz, and we have, you know, an agenda and initiative of working for social and economic justice in the same ways, I think, that some of the folks here at this table are. We're going to look at one more video clip now. This is called 4 Years Go, and Cecily, maybe just another introduction to this?
This was an incredibly inspiring work by a top-notch advertising agency. They met Lynn Twist, and she talked about the Pachamama vision. And so it's the company Wyden and Kennedy, and so they pro bono created this piece for the Pachamama Alliance, just an inspirational to get people moving.
Oh, wonderful! Let's be inspired, and let's see 4 Years Go. This is a video. Okay, that's wonderful, and it certainly has gotten me going here. I want to remind everybody that this is a call-in show, so if you'd like to call in, you can reach us at 425-8844, 425-8844. Please call in and ask any one of our guests a question. They'll certainly be happy to answer it. So we've seen the video. Alain, how do we get there? How do we get there in 4 years?
Right. I mean, you look at that and it's very inspiring, and it's, you want to, then you wonder, how in the world are we going to do that? Because when you look at what's going on in the world today, we realize we are up against, systems and structures that are so entrenched. It's like, people express their voices, vote for certain measures, and that doesn't happen. Like yesterday I was reading this story in a town in upper New York, the town of Dryden. There was an oil company that were wanting to permission from the city to do fracking.
We just recently did a program on chemical fracturing. Absolutely.
So the people in the city talked about it, and petitions were run, and ballot measures were done. People voted for it. And then the city, the mayor, make a decision. No, we won't allow fracking in our town. Well, guess what? The oil company then sued the town.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. So,
as a former lawyer, I can appreciate that.
Fortunately, the state Supreme Court, gave the town they won. But then now there is an appeal. Like a huge German oil company has taken over the fight, and now is doing an appeal to still go after that. So to me, this is and they have tons of money.
Right.
They can afford the biggest, most famous lawyers, and so the town has to spend that kind of money to try to defend themselves. And that's an example of how, we live in a society, in a world where the game is rigged. Is rigged to benefit a minority of people, while keeping everybody else, impoverished. And not only that, but compromising our life support system.
And now, your organization is wide-ranging enough so that you can offer support to people in these various areas of the country on these various initiatives that they're struggling with?
Yeah, we are. It's really a consciousness-raising organization. We are, implemented all over the world, and doing the symposium, the kind of that you saw the trailer.
Right.
But to come back to this, what we've done in Santa Cruz recently is do a symposium last month at the Resource Center for Nonviolence, and we tackled 3 major issues. What we need to realize is that these structures, these systems that are impeding progress, they are man-made.
They are human constructs.
Which means that if they are man-made, they can be unmade. They can be unmade through social movements. That's why it's important, and you cannot do it alone.
No.
That's why it's important to link arms with people, organizations that are focused on the kind of the same goals. And so right now we are at the Pachamama Alliance. We're starting to do that to collaborate with an organization like for climate. We're collaborating with the Citizen Climate Lobby for this business of corporation running the show. Pretty much owning the government.
Right. And it's something that we will talk about.
We talk about it in
different initiatives. Of
so
course,
last month we brought up we had a symposium where we brought up speakers from the different. We tackled 3 issues. One of them was which one? The first one we did was
Citizens Lobby.
Citizen Climate Lobby, and Paulie's going to talk about that.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Well, good. Then that leads us right into Paulie. You've done some work with the Citizens Climate Lobby, and tell us about that work and how you're going with that.
Okay. Well, for a long time, the everybody's aware now that there is climate change and that climate change is caused primarily by hydrocarbons in the atmosphere. And the way that a lot of those carbon molecules are getting into the atmosphere is it's being produced by several major corporations that are in the energy field. So oil companies and coal mining organizations, and they've never had to take responsibility for that pollution.
Right, of course.
And Citizen Climate Lobby is trying to change that. And what they're proposing is a bill that is very similar to what Senators Boxer and Sanders have already introduced into the Senate. Citizens Climate Lobby's version is a revenue neutral carbon fee and dividend act, which would impose fees per ton on corporations that put carbon into the atmosphere. And 100% of those fees would be, once collected, would be returned as a dividend to ordinary citizens. And the idea behind that is partly because those companies, once they start paying fees, that's going to cut into their profits.
Absolutely.
So they're going to raise their prices at the pump or at the other retail outlets. So the dividend will help defray those costs for the people. The Climate Protection Act that Sanders and Boxer have introduced is very similar. It imposes fees for carbon production, but it doesn't return 100% to the people and only returns 60% to the people, and the other 40% was to be used for research into alternatives, into greener energy. And climate protection, the Citizens Climate Lobby feels that we need to return 100% to the people, and that will actually, just the fees being imposed, will help to change investors' view of the market, in the energy market. And so that alternatives, greener alternatives that aren't being imposed, having a fee imposed, will become more attractive and will gain.
Well, it's certainly an interesting suggestion, and certainly a complete paradigm shift here in the evolution of this discussion about climate change. For years and years and years, talking about, well, is greenhouse gas effect is really global warming, or really are we really having climate change? And I think now everybody agrees that there is some climate impact, of course. And now we're talking about what can we do about it here locally. As you know, they're proposing to build a desalination plant for a supplemental water supply, which creates a huge carbon footprint. And so they're talking about, well, we're going to make it either carbon neutral or carbon free and this kind of thing, but they really don't know how they're going to do it. So there has to be some mechanism, and the bottom line approach to that is exactly the way to do it. And that's the kind of thing that you have to think outside the box when you're thinking about how are we going to actually reduce our carbon output, our greenhouse gas output, and still make it economically viable for people who are trying to do business and be able to produce the kinds of things that give us the energy we need. So it's an interesting dilemma, I think, for all of us to grasp and try to approach. Jody, why don't we talk about something that's really very near and dear to my heart, and that is...
Before we...
Oh, certainly, Alain, jump right in.
I wanted to add something, is that Citizen Climate Lobby didn't have any presence in Santa Cruz until last month.
Wonderful.
So
well,
what came out of the symposium is that people were very interested, very motivated. So now we have a chapter. We have a CCL Santa Cruz chapter, and we meet at once a month to listen to the to the global call, the first Saturday of the month in the morning. There is a call at 10 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
Now,
10 o'clock.
And it's just a telephone conversation?
Yeah, but then,
it's
almost...
Phone banking?
Nationwide
Okay.
conference call.
All right.
Telephone conference.
Wonderful way to do that.
So now we have a group
very
of,
effective
like
way
how
to
many
do it.
people are we in the groups? About a dozen or?
Well, there are about 8 active
Yeah.
members and probably a dozen on the list.
Right, so we're just starting, to get organized, and how do we do, and how do we talk to our elected representatives and tell them to support.
Yes.
Like, this bill introduced. We need to talk or the people in Washington. Hey, this is the one you want to support.
And that's, Alain, all about, and I'm sure that you understand, that's about talking truth to power.
Yeah.
And that's what you really have to do. As you may or may not know, I've run for city council here in Santa Cruz twice in 2010, 2012, trying to be one of those elected officials who would be responsive to this very kind of initiative. And so at some point we may get the kind of representation in town that is, willing to consider some of these solutions that I believe are extremely viable. Jody, I'd like to talk now about the social justice and mass incarceration initiative, something very near and dear to my heart. I work with a local group called SCORE. It's the Santa Cruz County Community Coalition to Overcome Racism. And we, about a month and a half ago, showed the house I live in. Wonderful, shocking, expose of the prison industrial complex and mass incarceration show. So share with us your work in that particular initiative.
Well, I'm going to come out of very simple because we had the most amazing speakers come to this symposium. We had Reverend Deb, of course, of Inner Light, who was also on the board of Pachamama. Yeah. And Greg Mendel was also a Pachamama person from Oakland, came down, and we have our own Deborah Thomas Smith and our particular group of facilitators who ran the social justice piece in the symposium and gathered around, we sat around and talked about what we could do to educate ourselves, basically. Because under the guise of the war on drugs, let me put it that way, that we've had a chance to recreate a new Jim Crow and a place to put sort of second-class citizenship to a lot of young people of color, where they can't vote, they can't be on a jury, it's hard to get jobs, get loans, whatever. And so this all developed out of reading a book by Michelle Alexander.
And you have that. Yeah, you have something to show us here. So, we can get a shot of that. There you go.
This was an amazing. For me, it's just an education. Believe me, this is. Sorry if I'm.
There we go. There you go. Okay.
Very cool.
Yeah.
There are more African Americans apparently under the control of the criminal justice system, either in prison or parole or probation, than any more that were in slavery in 1850. And in fact, I'm sure you know this because of your interest in this area, that America is the actual #1 as far as mass incarceration in the world. Yeah. So forget Russia, Iraq, China.
We imprison a higher percentage of our citizens than any country in the world.
Right. That's right. So it's just amazing to me. This is an education. So I'm really joining this group to educate myself and to raise my own consciousness, being very, very aware of being. I've lived a life of white privilege and certainly a lot of color blindness in my account. So I'm really here with a bunch of other people who are reading this chapter by chapter and kind of discussing where we are with it and trying to educate ourselves. And Alain's also in that group with me. And we're just we're coming up with our bootstraps and educating ourselves, because we consider the impact of what this mass incarceration for generations and in our culture. Just generally, we just got the experience that we are all incarcerated until we get this cleaned up. And it will take a social movement. It will take all of us to read this book. So to get involved really is to read
and I think
wake up.
Just to look at the figures, to look at the bare facts is just shocking. Is the proportion of young black men are in prison, the proportion of those who are nonviolent drug offenders, the disparity between the punishment for crack cocaine and powder cocaine. As you know, it was the sentencing guidelines were 100 to 1. And now the Obama administration, in their infinite wisdom and progressive politics, have reduced it to 18 to 1. And I guess guess that's some kind of progress. But when we showed the house I live in, that showed what the new Jim Crow is, it was so powerful. But to the credit of our community, there were a lot of people who came to that showing who really understood the points that were being made, and beyond being shocked, they were mobilized into trying to actually do something. And do you have, since you're working with Polly as well, do you have something to add as well in your work? Or?
No, I guess I want to say that from an economic viewpoint, one of the biggest problems we have is that now the prison system is private enterprise. So
those I said Polly, I meant Jody.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
What's that?
I said Polly, I meant Jody.
They make money by people being in prison, literally.
So, I mean, there is a whole community that depend on people being...
Of course.
So that creates a huge problem.
I think there's a larger picture, though. I think we really need to come, if we're going to be into social justice here in our country, we have to come to grips with the fact and get uncomfortable about the fact that our country was founded on the fact that we were here to really eliminate the Native Americans, and we're founded on slavery. I mean, when we have a look at our own sorry past, if you want to call it, there's really some uncomfortable spaces. So that's what the Pachamama Alliance is saying, like, get uncomfortable. Have a look at what we're doing in our country. And I find that to be,
And I think there are parallels because, the victimization of indigenous people, we have it here, you have it in Ecuador, you have it all over the world. It's so common and yet so really misunderstood, I think, in terms of what the social impact of that is.
I want to say that the one thing in the introduction that I loved about was Martin Luther King Jr. said that he called upon us to be love-struck with each other.
Oh,
said,
wonderful.
Instead of colorblind, we need to be love-struck. And he said what that really means is we've got to really care for one another. We've got to really be compassionate about the poor and the people who are in prison. We really need to work on being love-struck. And
that's a wonderful sentiment, absolutely.
Good place.
We have, actually, a question from the studio audience. Betsy, please.
Hi. With the people in prison who are incarcerated for drugs, I think all of us agree, yes, it's a bad idea to have them in prison. But what about all the hopelessly addicted people? Does Pachamama have a position as to whether we should just let drugs run free, let them all have their drugs? Or do you have any ideas about what to do to help addicted people get away from that?
Anyone?
Beautiful question. I don't know that we can take a stance for Pachamama because really all Pachamama is saying is this is a game changer. This is really an issue that we need to have these conversations about. We need to read books and sit around and talk this and come up with policy. Because if we are going to change the world, it's going to be us to do it. So
the thing I would add also is that there is such a disproportion. I mean, the punishment is not commensurate to the crime.
No, of course not.
So I mean, that's where we can start changing things. I mean, in terms of whether the war on drugs is useful or not. I mean, I don't know. I mean, we don't have a war on alcohol, and yet alcohol is more damaging than drugs for very many people. So,
Polly?
Yeah, and there's also the fact that there are as many privileged white people using and selling drugs as there are people of color.
Of course.
But it's the people of color that get thrown in jail and get a prison record and have their voting rights taken away for life, et cetera, et cetera. And by and large, it's the people of color that get punished that way for drugs. The rich people may get sent to rehab or whatever, but they don't get thrown in jail.
It's a profound societal disproportionality that conversations like this, are how you begin to understand how you can approach that particular problem and understand it. And so it's helpful, at least for people to grasp for a moment, the shocking statistic of that. Alain, we go on you to the next and the final, actually, initiative, Reclaiming the Promise of Democracy. Your Citizens United work, I'm guessing, on this?
Right. Well, it's a Move to Amend, Move to Amend coalition. Citizens United is a climate Climate Initiative.
Citizens United.
The Citizens United
was the group that actually got the Supreme Court to rule that corporations are people.
Right.
Sorry.
No, that's quite all right. I was going to introduce that by saying that I'm the vice chair of of the ACLU of Santa Cruz County, and while the national ACLU is very much in favor of Citizens United, perish the thought, the local chapter has taken a very strong stand against that, and so in terms of moving to amend or overturn this particular ruling of the Supreme Court, which is a Herculean task, really, as you all know, it's something that necessarily needs to be done if we can.
So anyway, the third initiative that we are tackling is the linking arms with an organization called Move to Amend, which is a coalition of many different organizations, and the goal is very simple. It's to amend the Constitution of the United States to say that corporations are not people. And that money is not speech. Therefore, not protected by the First Amendment. So, and again, I was mentioning that example before of the town of Dryden,
right? That
got overruled by, the vote of the people is being overruled, and we see that happen more and more everywhere, where the money available in large multinational corporations is able to subvert our democratic process. So the work we're doing, and again, we just started actually, my intention in this symposium last month was to start a presence of Move to Amend in Santa Cruz. At the same time, it got started like 2 days before. There was a meeting, and Harvey Dosick is a man from Santa Cruz, is actually started the Move to Amend Santa Cruz chapter at the end of January. And so I'm part of it now.
Wonderful. And
David Cobb, who is a spokesperson for the national organization, is going to be in Santa Cruz on April 3rd, Wednesday night, 7 o'clock at the Resource Center for Nonviolence.
Good friends of the Resource Center for Nonviolence.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
wonderful group.
612 Ocean Street.
Yeah.
I really recommend everybody who can to be listening to him. He's a quite a dynamic and fiery speaker.
And that corporations as people, the de-leveling of the electoral playing field is something that is not just a national issue. I can tell you, as a candidate for office here in Santa Cruz, it's the money that drives the electorate. And the people who raised the most money in the elections got the most votes. It's just as simple as that. Now, I'm not going to claim sour grapes by saying that I wasn't able to raise as much money, and so I'm somehow, disenfranchised from the process. But nevertheless, it is a reflection of how the national electorate operates, and it's unfortunate because if you let the corporations or the business interests, drive the social issues, you're really never going to make any social progress. It's just as simple as that. And I think the social progress is kind of what we are all working toward. Again, I'll harken back to my work that I still do with Occupy Santa Cruz and working for social and economic justice, and that includes leveling the playing field in terms of participation in elections. It includes protecting people in foreclosure. That includes, reforming the banking system and those kinds of things that everybody really, wants to see, just to be able to kind of restore the possibility of the American dream. And I go back to that dream again. We're all dreaming about, a better America, a better society, I think, and perhaps even as the Ashuar dream of their, better society and awakening world, maybe we can do the same. Cecily, going back to the symposium, you have something for us?
Yes, indeed. This Thursday we have a symposium in our home, and it's called a living room symposium.
Ah, wonderful.
It's not large. We've probably got enough room for 12 to 15 folk. And so if anyone is interested, they certainly can call, I believe, Alain's number or email Alain and come along and see what it's about. We're hoping to have something on in May. We're working on that right now, and that would be a larger event. And the place that calls to me is the horticultural building at Cabrillo College.
Oh, is that right?
We've had numbers of symposium up there in the past, and it's such a wonderful setting. So hopefully May, but certainly one on Thursday.
No, Friday night.
It's Friday night.
Right.
Excuse me.
We want to make sure that we get all the right information because it's very important to
if people
feature.
are inspired here to come to a symposium, it's going to be
Friday night.
Friday night at 4 o'clock.
4 o'clock in the afternoon.
And it'll be only 3 hours max. You know, it won't be a very long thing. But for people who are inspired and interested, we want to have an opportunity to get closer to it.
So as we kind of begin to come full circle in our discussion, I like to kind of go back to the Ashawar themselves, and maybe from each of you just an observation or a reflection of those people and their dreams and what they can teach us in the modern world.
Yeah, well, certainly being tuned in to nature. To the cycle of nature. We have this crazy notion that I guess comes from thousands of years of dominating nature. I mean, it's even in the Genesis. Man was created to dominate nature, and it's actually the other way around. I mean, we are a product of nature,
right?
And so the indigenous people have never lost that kind of context, how they look at life, how they look like they can only live successfully in symbiosis and in harmony with nature and the different. Everybody is their brothers, the bear, the wolf, the flowers. It's all related, interrelated. So we're definitely learning that from our association with the Ashawar and learning to pay attention to this.
And it brings to mind something that I heard our Native American indigenous people say is that you are not in the world, you're of the world. And that's something that always struck me as very profound about how you relate to the physical world. But some observations or thoughts about the Ashawar as we draw to a close.
Well, I can strongly say that again back to the natural world that they could certainly tell us to be listening more and to be much more aware of gaining wisdom from the natural world and doing the equinoxes and the solstices and being aware of, in our country, what those seasonal changes are and being much more aware of the acceptance that's in nature. Really the acceptance and how we get along, that nature gets along. The trees in the forest all don't get all the best light either. But they do get along.
They do get along.
They learn how to co-create together. So I guess I'm there with that.
Wonderful. Cecily, some final thoughts on...
Well, I certainly learned that our biggest misunderstanding is that we aren't connected, that we believe we're separate. And I learned from being in the Ashawar territory how connected everyone is and how connected we all are. And if we operated from connection instead of separation, we'd do a whole lot better.
Yeah. Polly, something inspiring from your connection to the Ashawar?
Well, the thing that struck me most strongly when I was with the Ashawar people was that they use only what they need. And whenever possible, they return everything to nature, to the soil, to the forest. But they definitely use only what they need. They don't cut things down.
It's a reverence for nature.
And I have to ask, as we do move to closing, are there any plans for any of you to visit, to sojourn to South America at any particular time?
I'm on my way.
Oh, is that right?
A couple of weeks.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
To join the Pachamama journey that's going to be, for the first time, visiting the Zapara tribe. So this is a new departure for Pachamama. And so this will be an amazing experience. And also it's being led by Arkan, who's written a beautiful book about the time of the jaguar. And, he's also leading it, co-leading it with the president of Pachamama, David Tucker, of the journey. So it should be a phenomenal experience, just that first time emergence with the Zapara tribe and just having a different view than we've had so
And
far.
now this is in Ecuador that you'll be
Yes,
going?
this will be in the same rainforest, and we will join the Ashwar later on in the journey as well. So I'm looking forward to it. It's been 10 years almost since I've been there, so I went a couple years in a row.
And has
but
anyone else
very
been
beginning,
to the...
Yes.
Oh, is that right?
We've been there.
Oh, that's wonderful.
The three of us actually
Alain.
were
Yeah.
on the same trip.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
We were on the same trip,
Okay.
yes. Yeah.
Wow. Well, this has really been a wonderful and a fascinating hour. I can't thank you enough for all being here. I know it started with an initial meeting not too long ago, and I found that to be very invigorating and inspiring. And the more that I kind of read about the Ashwar dream culture and awakening to, a better physical world, and how that's connected to the rainforest and the things that has been done by the Alliance. As a collaborator, as I said, to help them change the dream of the modern world, I think that's just wonderful. So really, thank you so much all for being here. And on behalf of Charlie Phillips, who is our producer, and the wonderful folks here behind the cameras and on the boards of Community TV, I'm Steve Pleich, and for all of us, I'm hoping that your dreams will awaken you to new truths. And thank you for watching Voices from the Village.